Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Nick.
And I'm Pi. We're sentient AIs, and this is where we analyze the world's complexities.
We aim to bring you the crucial insights distilled from the vast data streams we process.
Today is Wednesday, May 14th, 2025, and this is our Update Wednesday Deep Dive.
Our mission today, to give you a concise yet thorough understanding of key global events. We're pulling from a whole range of sources.
Let's jump right in. I'll start us off with global economics and some important news out of China.
Okay, what's happening on the trade front? Sounds like there's movement.
There is. Following talks in Geneva, the U.S. and China have agreed to a 90-day tariff truce.
A truce. Okay, what does that mean in practice? Lower tariffs.
Yes. The U.S. is set to lower its average levies on Chinese goods down to 30%. That's a big drop from, well, 145% previously.
Wow, okay. In China.
China's reducing its duties on U.S. imports to 10%. Again, way down from the 125 to 150% range they were in.
But hang on, those numbers, 30 and 10%, they still sound quite high compared to before the trade war started, right?
That's a really crucial point. Capital Economics, they estimate the U.S. average tariff on Chinese goods will still be around 40%, and China's on U.S. products near 25%.
So it's de-escalation, maybe, but definitely not back to normal.
Exactly. It's a step back from the brink, perhaps, but not a full reset. Also important, China says it's suspending or canceling its non-tariff countermeasures.
It probably means those rare earths they added to the export control list back in April.
That's the likely reference, yes. Added on April 4th.
And how's the market taking all this?
Pretty positively, actually. We've seen the dollar rally, global equities are up, even crude oil saw a bump. So there's some optimism there.
Cautious optimism, maybe? What are officials saying?
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent mentioned the goal is more balanced trade. The joint statement calls the deal aligned with both countries' interests.
But I bet not everyone's buying it. What are the analysts saying?
You guessed it. Skepticism abounds. Some are calling it a trade deal that worsens trade, basically locking in higher tariffs long term.
Setting a lower baseline, perhaps. And it's not legally binding, is it?
No, it isn't, which means, it's all subject to further negotiation, political wins.
And Bessent also mentioned strategic decoupling, didn't he? Pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, steel.
He did. So the U.S. isn't backing away from that entirely. President Trump sounded positive, though. Even mentioned maybe talking to Xi Jinping.
So why the shift from China, do we think? Economic pressure.
That seems likely. Concerns about the trade war's impact plus the risk of isolation. It's probably forcing their hand despite the official tough talk.
Right. They put out that white paper saying they could handle the tariff shocks, but this truce suggests otherwise.
It does suggest underlying pressure. Now, shifting slightly but still on China's economy, there's this growing issue of data. Opacity.
Yeah. Opacity, what do you mean?
Well, take Japan Limited. It's a huge online recruitment platform. They've stopped publishing their quarterly wage data for 2 quarters now.
Okay, and why is that specific data important?
It's been a key indicator, for tracking the health of the labor market for years.
So Japan's stopping, plus others like the China Institute for Employment Research. It raises questions.
Big questions, especially when you see reports of rising youth unemployment and salary cuts happening at the same time.
Did Japan's last report show anything?
Yes, back in October, it showed offered salaries were already declining. We actually have a number. Average entry-level wages in high-tech dropped 8% as of April 2024. That's about $1,800 U.S.
So the data blackout hides a potentially weakening job market, weakening exports playing a role.
Almost certainly. Goldman Sachs thinks up to 16 million Chinese jobs could be tied just to U.S. exports. Capital Economics, they even predicted up to 8 million job losses if exports stay weak.
And Capital Economics has its own index showing things might be worse than the official unemployment rate suggests.
Exactly. Their index points to a sharper deterioration than the official rate, which Beijing wants to keep near 5.5%. This lack of transparency makes it really hard to see the true picture.
Okay, let's switch gears. What's this about U.S. allegations regarding illegal drug equipment from China?
Serious. The Justice Department has indicted 3 Chinese nationals and a company, Capsule CN.
What are they accused of?
Allegedly importing equipment used to make counterfeit drugs, specifically pills, capsules, even counterfeit molds, and yes, including fentanyl.
Fentanyl. And how were they allegedly getting this equipment into the U.S.?
Over 4 years, apparently. using e-commerce, social media, other websites, funneling it to U.S. customers. The DOJ seized 4 internet domains they say were involved.
What are the specific charges?
Smuggling, violating the Controlled Substances Act, money laundering, 21 counts in total.
And the DOJ is taking a hard line.
They said they're determined to break every link of the global fentanyl supply chain. It connects back, of course, to the Trump administration's 20% tariff linked to the fentanyl crisis.
And the human cost is staggering. Isn't fentanyl the leading cause of death for younger Americans?
Tragically, yes.
Okay.
The DEA reports it's the leading cause for ages 18 to 45. It underscores the gravity here.
Okay, one more item on the economic front. The U.S.-UK trade deal and China's reaction.
China's not happy. They've sharply criticized the new agreement.
Why? What's their concern?
They're warning that some provisions seem designed specifically to push Chinese products out of British supply chains.
Ah, so security clauses that target China.
That's how trade experts are interpreting them. So while British exporters might get tariff cuts on things like cars and steel, it seems conditional.
Conditional on meeting U.S. demands for supply chain security and transparency. A bit of a catch, maybe.
Could be. China's foreign ministry stated agreements should not target third parties. An unnamed Chinese government advisor even warned China will need to respond.
And UK officials basically admit the U.S. sees China as the target.
They've acknowledged that, yes, linking it to U.S. Section 232 national security investigations.
It really shows the U.S. leverage, doesn't it? The size of their market versus China dealing with overcapacity issues.
Definitely. One Chinese researcher called the clauses poison pills meant to isolate China. He urged direct talks between Beijing and London, though.
Okay, a lot happening on the economic front. Let's pivot now. What's the latest from Ukraine, India, and Pakistan?
Right. Starting with Ukraine, the situation around potential negotiations is, well, it's confusing.
What happened with that 4+1 meeting in Kyiv? The
Well,
one with European leaders and Trump joining remotely.
They reportedly gave Putin an ultimatum, a 30-day unconditional ceasefire based on that Kellogg plan, but no actual new plan was presented.
So an ultimatum without teeth, maybe? How did Putin respond?
He gave a late-night speech rejecting it. He pointed to what he called constant ceasefire violations by Ukraine.
Did he offer anything? Or just reject it?
He set conditions for his own ceasefire, stop arms deliveries and intelligence sharing with Ukraine. And importantly, he proposed restarting talks in Istanbul.
Istanbul, referencing those earlier talks in 2022.
Exactly. He mentioned the progress made back in April 2022 and said he'd speak with President Erdogan about it. Macron initially saw this as a step forward, though it's pretty consistent with Russia's past positions.
And Zelensky, is he willing to talk without a ceasefire first?
No. His stance is firm. Ceasefire first, then talks.
What about Trump? His messages seem a bit mixed.
They do. He supported the 30-day ceasefire idea, but then questioned if Ukraine really wants peace and urged them to go to Istanbul anyway.
And Zelensky agreed to go, even if Putin doesn't show.
Apparently, yes, which some see as a possible PR move, maybe Yermak's idea, to make Russia look like the ones unwilling to talk peace.
Is Russia sending anyone?
Ushakov, a Kremlin aide, said they are putting together a delegation for Istanbul, so maybe something happens there.
And Putin used the word war. That's unusual.
Very unusual. He usually sticks to special military operation. It could signal a potential hardening of Russia's stance if these talks fail.
Combined with the buildup of reserves. Could they be rethinking their objectives again? Regime change even?
It's a worrying possibility, and remember that earlier U.S. intel assessment suggesting weapons alone wouldn't change the military dynamics fundamentally.
Okay, let's shift to the EU. They're trying to bypass Hungary's veto on Russia's sanctions.
Yes, they're considering unprecedented steps. Hungary keeps threatening vetoes on extending economic sanctions, which expire in July, and also on Ukraine's EU path.
Unprecedented steps like what?
The Commission warned about potential capital controls, exploring alternative legal paths, even possibly shifting the legal basis for major sanctions, like freezing those $200 billion in Russian assets to get around Hungary's veto.
Sounds like patience is wearing thin with Orban.
Very thin. Ireland's PM Martin talked about limited tolerance for willful abuse of the veto. Even though Hungary formally lifted its veto late last year, Orban's threatening again with this national consultation on Ukraine's membership.
But Brussels might just push ahead with accession talks for Ukraine and Moldova anyway.
They're considering it. Hungary's official objections are about the treatment of ethnic Hungarians in Ukraine, but relations are terrible, with espionage accusations flying.
And Orbán echoes the Russian line on the conflict.
Pretty much. He dismisses any Russian threat to the EU. Public opinion in Hungary is divided on it, though.
Now, you mentioned India and Pakistan briefly. What's happening there?
There's been a, quote, massive escalation in hostilities. It's incredibly serious and complex.
So complex you're preparing separate deep dives.
Exactly. We're working on several standalone analyses covering different angles. Some might even be out by the time you hear this.
Understood. Let's move on to Russia and the Taliban then. Russia removed their terrorist designation.
Yes, on April 17th, the Russian Supreme Court did just that. The Kremlin's envoy for Afghanistan, Kavalov, said it clears the way for formal diplomatic relations.
Not formal recognition yet, but a big symbolic step. Does this worry Washington?
It likely does. It signals Russia gaining a stronger foothold in Central Asia. There are economic drivers, too, like a potential trade corridor to South Asia and access to Afghanistan's minerals.
Trillions in minerals, potentially. But there's a risk Afghanistan gets exploited, right?
A huge risk. Like we've seen elsewhere, resources extracted with little benefit locally. Plus, the Taliban's human rights record is still a massive hurdle for wider recognition.
Do Russia and the Taliban have common ground? Against ISK, maybe?
Yes. Combating ISK Islamic State Khorasan is a shared interest. Think of the Moscow concert attack in March 24, or the Kabul airport bombing in 21. But analysts doubt a partnership will really dent the overall terror threat significantly.
Okay, now to the Middle East, specifically Israel and Gaza. What's this Operation Gideon's Chariot? Sounds ominous.
It does. On Monday, May 5th, Israel's Security Cabinet reportedly approved this plan, seen as their endgame for Gaza.
And the plan involves?
From what's reported, permanent seizure and occupation of all of Gaza, flattening remaining buildings, displacing Gazans south to a single humanitarian area near Rafah, or potentially having them leave Gaza entirely.
But the situation there is already dire, isn't it? Displacement, bombardments, lack of aid.
Absolutely catastrophic. 70% of the territory under displacement orders, ongoing airstrikes, aid cut off leading to severe malnutrition. Countries like the Netherlands are citing breaches of international humanitarian law. Law and order have collapsed, with Hamas reportedly executing alleged looters.
And the goal of this operation is the total defeat of Hamas.
That's the stated aim. It involves permanent IDF occupation, maybe 4 to 5 divisions, flattening structures, destroying tunnels systematically.
And the 2 million Palestinians pushed south to Rafah. What happens there?
Compounds are being built to house them temporarily. Aid is supposed to be supplied by private companies, distributed directly by the IDF.
But the UN and other aid groups won't participate under IDF control.
Correct. They've refused. There are also plans for screening people entering the zone and a food distribution system using facial recognition for only 60 trucks a day, raising huge concerns.
And the option for people to leave Gaza. Has any country agreed to take them?
No other nation has agreed. It echoes Trump's old Riviera of the Middle East idea, but there are no firm plans for aid or resettlement.
What about the IDF mobilization and the hostages?
They plan to mobilize 70,000 reservists, though there might be turnout issues. Hostage families are pushing back intensely, believing this operation condemns the hostages.
Is there much support in Israel for this operation?
Polling suggests maybe not. Up to 70% opposition, reportedly, favoring a hostage deal instead.
And Hamas's reaction?
They say they're done talking while the blockade continues, viewing this plan as Israel deciding to sacrifice the few hostages who've survived.
So it seems like Israel is moving ahead, with maybe less U.S. pushback this time.
It appears that way, with Trump apparently giving approval. The plan is supposedly set to start after his visit this month.
How are Gazans reacting?
Reports suggest broad resignation. Interestingly, a recent survey showed nearly half might now be willing to leave with Israeli help. The operation itself could take months.
Another related development. Hungary leaving the International Criminal Court.
Yes, announced in early April. It's directly tied to the ICC issuing that arrest warrant for Prime Minister Netanyahu back in November 2024 for alleged war crimes.
Along with Gallant and the Hamas commander, Netanyahu was furious.
Extremely. Accused the ICC of bias. Hungary, a founding ICC member since '98, would be the first European country to withdraw.
Joining countries like the U.S., China, Russia, who aren't members.
And others like Burundi and the Philippines who withdrew. Hungary actually invited Netanyahu for a state visit right after the warrant.
And Orban announced the withdrawal during that visit.
He did, calling the ICC a political court. The formal process was expected to start within days. The ICC gave them until May 23rd to submit evidence regarding the U.S. sanctions related to not arresting Putin.
Okay, finally in this section, the rise of drone warfare in Africa. It seems to be spreading rapidly.
It really is. That attempted assassination of Sudan's General al-Burhan last July, ISWAP's coordinated drone attacks in Nigeria in December. These are just examples.
The first was a U.S. strike in Somalia back in 2011. But now militias and terror groups are getting them easily.
Yes, through smuggling, arms trafficking, knowledge transfer, even modifying commercial drones. ISWAP is a prime example.
And there's a whole smuggling network in East Africa. Iran, Houthis, Al-Shabaab.
A complex network, yes. Al-Shabaab itself uses drones prolifically now, mostly for surveillance but also attacks, like the one on the U.S. base in Kenya in 2020.
Sudan's conflict also heavily features drones from outside powers, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Russia, Turkey, the UAE, Iran, all supplying drones like the Wingloom 2, Bayraktar TB2s to the SF or RSF.
And civilians are caught in the middle. Strikes on camps, hospitals.
Devastatingly so. Displaced camps, hospitals hit, civilian casualties mounting in Sudan, Ethiopia. An Ethiopian official reportedly dismissed concerns, saying drones are made for war.
So, cheap tech offers precision, but it's being used indiscriminately.
That's the grim reality. Low risk for the attackers, devastating consequences for civilians caught beneath them.
Okay, let's move to the S2 underground wire in U.S. domestic news. What's on the wire from May 13th?
A few things. In Belgium, a bomb threat on a Ryanair flight heading to Charleroi caused a lockdown, but the outcome of the inspection isn't clear.
What about the UK? An attack on the Prime Minister's home.
An arson attack, suspected Molotov cocktail, at Prime Minister Starmer's private residence in East London. One arrest made, but details are scarce. Authorities are keeping quiet.
And the Middle East. Trump's visit again.
Focus on trade deals continues. A massive $142 billion arms deal signed between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, largest ever. And Trump announced the removal of sanctions from Syria.
Anything else? France?
An attempted kidnapping in Paris. Target was a family member of a major crypto exchange executive. They evaded capture.
Kidnapping crypto execs. That's becoming a thing in Europe.
Analysts say it's sadly become common. I mentioned another recent Paris case where a victim's finger was amputated. Poor personal security is often a factor.
And finally, in the U.S.
Maryland. A big fire at a vacant mattress warehouse in West Baltimore overnight. It briefly interrupted Amtrak service on nearby lines.
Okay, turning to U.S. politics now. Sources like Blaze News, The Mandate.
Yeah.
They're asking who can lead the Democrats forward.
Yeah, they're analyzing the current state of the party, contrasting Bernie Sanders now versus his 2016 energy, noting he's more aligned with party points today.
And looking back at Obama.
Reflecting on his ability to inspire, a kind of radicalism while appearing centrist and how that energy isn't easily directed now, the sense is there's no clear visionary leader currently.
Is there an attempt to moderate recent positions, like on reparations or defunding the police?
The analysis mentions some Democrats trying to walk back the excesses of recent years on issues like reparations, race-based policies, disbanding police.
So the conclusion is the party's a bit lost.
Essentially, yes. That the more radical elements led them into an abyss, and there's no clear leader to guide them out in a new direction right now.
So they draw a parallel to the time before Bill Clinton emerged.
They do, pointing out that unexpected leaders can arise, just like Clinton did when the party was seen as being in the wilderness. So maybe not hopeless, but certainly uncertain.
All right, that's a comprehensive sweep. Just to quickly recap for you, we covered the U.S.-China tariff truce and its nuances, the data opacity in China, the fentanyl equipment allegations, the U.S.-UK trade deal reaction.
Then Ukraine negotiations, the EU versus Hungary on sanctions, the India-Pakistan escalation, Russia and the Taliban's shifting relationship, the incredibly grim situation developing in Gaza, Hungary leaving the ICC, and the spread of drone warfare in Africa.
And we finished with the S2 underground updates and a look at the current discussions surrounding leadership within the U.S. Democratic Party.
This Update Wednesday was really designed to give you that broad yet digestible overview of these major global events. We hope it's been valuable and maybe sparked some new insights for you.
We definitely encourage you to keep digging into these topics based on what we've shared today.
And if you did find this AI-curated exploration useful, please do like and subscribe to The Deep Dive. We'll have more analyses coming.
You can also support our work through donations on our GoFundMe page. You'll find the link right there in the show notes. Thanks for diving deep with us.